President-elect Trump is on hold maybe a few more weeks before Americans get details about how he plans to separate himself from his businesses. We're back with Democratic Senator Chris Coons of Delaware. I want to talk about that in a moment. But we're now hearing from you that you're going to be meeting. You're going up to New York tomorrow to Trump Tower to sit down and meet with Donald Trump. What's that all about?
Yes, Wolf, it will probably be a fairly brief meeting. Senator Bozeman, a Republican from Arkansas, and we are the co-chairs of the annual prayer breakfast, the National Prayer Breakfast. And we're simply extending an invitation to President-elect Trump to follow a tradition that goes back to President Eisenhower. Every president has spoken to this wonderful wonderful breakfast. It's non-sectarian, non-partisan. It's a celebration of the role of prayer and spirituality in America. There's 3,500 people who come from over 70 countries, and we're very hopeful that he'll accept the invitation. He'll speak in February.
I'm sure he'll accept that invitation because almost all of the presidents do accept that invitation. But when you're there tomorrow, will you raise some of your concerns with him, whether about Russian hacking or some of the nominees he's put forward? Is that appropriate?
My goal really simply is to extend an invitation to the National Prayer Breakfast.
But if he says, let's get into a conversation with you and your Republican colleague, you're more than happy to talk to him about those kinds of sensitive issues.
We're going to try and keep this focused on what I think will be a very positive national event. But if he wants to talk, we're always happy to talk about other things.
All right, let's talk about the news conference that's now been delayed at least until January and how he's going to separate himself from his huge business out there. This is what he tweeted last night, and I'll put it up on the screen. Even though I am not mandated by law to do so, I will be leaving my businesses before January 20th so that I can focus full-time on the presidency. Two of my children, Don and Eric, plus executives will manage them. No new deals will be done during my terms, terms in office. So is that satisfactory to you?
Well, I don't think we even know yet just how complicated, how sprawling Donald Trump's interests are, because he's never released his taxes. So the general public, members of Congress, we don't really know the reach and scope of his business interests. We don't know who's invested in his properties. We don't know whether he has obligations or commitments to either Russian oligarchs or to Chinese banks or other potential sources of complication. So frankly, we don't know, and I don't know yet whether this will be acceptable. I do think that he has a significantly greater risk of conflicts of interest than any modern president because of how broad and complicated his global network of real estate holdings are, and because his immediate family, even under his scenario, would continue to have a direct hand in making those key decisions.
But he's right when he says, I am not mandated by law to do so. He doesn't have to do anything, but he's doing it anyhow.
There's a conflicts of interest statute that covers thousands of federal employees.
But not the president or the vice president.
And it specifically exempts the president and vice president. I do think we haven't had a modern president with the kind of potential for very real conflicts here. When I was a county elected official, I was involved in a lot of land use decisions, and those often can be very complicated, very contentious, and even political. I don't see how he can be president and yet still have this family empire going ahead with development projects in countries as diverse.
He's not going to do new ones, though. He says no new ones. He's got existing deals that are going to be implemented. But his two sons with executives are going to be in charge. And he's, we're going to get more details if and when he holds this news conference in January. But he makes the point, you know what? Being president is a full-time, 100% job, and I'm not going to have time to do any of those other deals, if you will.
I hope what we'll hear is he's going to sever all ties with his family business. I know that'll be hard to do, but it's worth it.
Do you want him to sell that business? Is that what you're saying?
I think he should separate himself from the global Trump organization.
What does that mean, separate himself? Because the only way he can completely sever himself is he says, you know what, it's up for sale. Let some huge company buy the whole thing right now. But there's a lot of real estate. That's not that simple.
It's not simple, but he said for many years that a lot of the value of the Trump organization is the brand, and the brand depends on things that he, Donald Trump, does. So it'll be very hard for him, I think, to be president and to stay focused on the obligations of the presidency if he still has these complex web of significant real estate interests that is going on and going forward.
Senator Coons, thanks as usual for coming in.
Thank you.
Just ahead, why the White House chose not to reveal